Three. Hello, welcome. This is David Greenwald from the Davis Vanguard, and we're interviewing the Davis City Council candidates. This is Brett Lee, one of the challengers. Five candidates challenging to be on the council. You get to vote for three of them. And Brett, why don't you just briefly, in the next 30 seconds or so, introduce yourself and why you're running.
My name's Brett Lee. I'm running for City Council because I think we need a change. I don't think the existing City Council has really addressed the big issues facing our community, and I think that I would be helpful in addressing those big issues, and I would definitely look forward to working with my fellow council people to really get them to focus on the big issues and actually tackle them head on.
And so what do you see as the big issues before us?
I'd say the biggest issue is the city budget. That's absolutely the biggest issue. I think if we don't get that right, if we get that right, other things will fall into place. And specifically about the city budget is we have a huge unfunded pension liability for the city employees, and we have a retiree health care benefit unfunded liability. And so my proposal is that we don't lay anyone off, but we do ask that the city employees pay more towards their pension cost and more towards their health care cost. So it's important for me not to kind of approach this as we need to cut heads. I think that the city employees provide valuable services for us, and so if we reduce the number of them, we actually hurt our city. I think a much fairer way and more community-minded way would be to just ask that everybody sort of pitch in to help us in this situation.
Well, let me follow up on that, because one of the things we figured out last year was that over the next 3 fiscal years, between pension costs increase, between the retiree health care, between unfunded street infrastructure, we're probably looking at an additional $7 million in costs, which is a fifth of our general fund. So how are you going to cut into that without laying off employees?
So I guess there's sort of two aspects to the budget. There's the long-term issue, and the long-term issue is some of the structural deficits because of the unfunded pension liabilities, and also the unfunded maintenance of the roads and things like that. So in that aspect, I think my proposal will address that in the long run. As time goes on, people pay a greater and greater share of their pension costs and healthcare benefit costs. In the short run, there is also a problem. I think there we can be more wise with our use of money. So for instance, right now we have 4 firemen per truck. We kind of have the 4-person model. Many cities have the 3-person model. But going from the 4-person to 3-person model, what we do is we reduce the need of fire staff at any given moment. But what that doesn't mean is we have to lay people off. What it does mean is we now can reduce overtime. Right now, overtime costs for firemen are quite substantial. By plan, firemen are working overtime. By going to that different type of model, we'll eliminate overtime cost. I think there's other efficiencies that we can take advantage of in the short term to address that. There's also, we have a contingency fund as well, and I think it would be all right to dip into that contingency fund provided 2 things are met. The 2 things are, we have the firm locked-in plan where we address the long-term unfunded liabilities, and then the second one is we have a very specific and short-term plan for how we're going to spend that. So what I wouldn't want to do is just say, gosh, we're in trouble, oh well, we'll just dip into our piggy bank and spend that money. What we need to do is have a very concrete, spelled out, agreed to plan of what we're doing to address the overall picture, and by having that, then I would feel comfortable dipping into our contingency fund to address some of the higher priority items.
What other issues are you looking at during your council race?
I think another big one is the water project. Perhaps it was 6 months ago. The City Council voted to increase everybody's water rates. By some measure, the rates were going to double. In terms of dollar amounts, my own water bill, when I use the city's website to calculate what my water bill would look like, my water bill was going to go up in the neighborhood of $400 to about $500 a year. The problem with that is that we weren't really given a chance to vote. There was a Prop 218 process, but I don't think that really substitutes for actually a community-wide vote. The reason it's an issue is the water rates were going up not just because they wanted the water rates to go up. What it was is that was a precursor to agreeing to going into a deal where we were going to commit as a community to spending over $160 million towards our share of a project with Woodland. My problem with a specific project is that I don't think the project was really as fully thought out as it should have been. So there are sort of two issues. One is raising our rates without having us be involved, and the other problem was the project itself I don't think was as wisely thought out as it should have been. As a direct result of the rate increase, there were a group of people, and I was one of them, that worked on a water rate referendum, and that's the referendum that halted the water rate increases. And because of that, there was a water advisory committee that was formed, and the water advisory committee is doing the thing that I think should have happened more on the front end, which is a bunch of very well educated experts in the field are looking at our whole water situation and trying to come up with a better, more affordable plan for all of us here. So I support their efforts, and in kind of I don't know if I really answered your question exactly, but I think the water issue is a big issue, and it really sort of nests under the budget issue.
I want to talk briefly about economic development. The city of Davis obviously shares the community with UC Davis. That provides an opportunity, but also we've done something maybe contradictory to economic development by rezoning ConAgra. So if you could wrap your discussion of ConAgra in with an overall view of how we develop economically.
Sure. So I think it's great that you mentioned UC Davis. I mean, without UC Davis, Davis wouldn't be what it is. And a lot of times we sort of pretend or just somehow are blind to the fact that our destiny is closely intertwined with UC Davis. And so it really makes sense that we develop and really encourage those active partnerships with them. So ConAgra, it is an interesting thing. The ConAgra site itself was designed more for commercial and business purposes, and what we're being asked to do with the current ConAgra proposal is rezone it so it's predominantly residential. The residential component is in the neighborhood of 70%. There's sort of an interesting thing going on. On one hand, you have a lot of people saying, we're going to be developing these partnerships with UC Davis, we're going to start these business incubator projects, and we're going to have a bunch of businesses that are going to want to locate in Davis, but they're all going to want to locate at the Nishi property because Nishi is closer to the campus and closer to the freeway. So that's going on this side. And then on the other side, even though ConAgra is fully within the city's control, they're saying, oh, businesses don't want to locate there, it's too far away, and obviously if the business tenant had wanted to locate there, they would have done so because the property has been vacant. I think they're missing a couple of key things. As a former business planner, I feel like I have a fairly good sense of how many businesses kind of view the world. Businesses like certainty. There is a real drawback with the Nishi property. The huge drawback is it's subject to a Measure J or R vote. Basically, for us to use that property, it requires us to have a citywide vote, and it has to have voter approval. So the problem is this idea that there's all these businesses and they're going to prefer Nishi to ConAgra. I think it's important for us to really take a step back, and if we talk to those businesses, my sense is many of them would prefer the sure thing of ConAgra rather than a hypothetical Nishi property.
Well, that's just about all the time we have. Can you quickly share with us your web address?
Yes, it's www.brett, the numeral 4, and Davis. So brettfordavis.com.
Great. Thanks a lot. This has been David Greenwald from the Davis Vanguard.